And this was approach that I'd never taken before, but it's more or less what I do now. I sort of, as Pat was saying last night, I begin maybe looking at a sketch that I've done or refreshing my memory with a picture, and then I just begin, and then hopefully, if it works well, it takes a life of its own. And then this became more of an abstraction of the farm in Peterborough, looking out the back window. And at the time, I was studying R. Mary Schaeffer and putting his music to, let me think, what was I doing? Emily Carr, I think I was. Anyway, we had to study native music and identify, but I didn't realize at the time that certainly what was going on with me otherwise was coming through in my point. This is 1989, and this is when I went to Emma Lake for the first time. And this was really, I guess, I thought I should show this book because this is really the beginning of when I started thinking of myself more as an artist, because I'd only been taking courses and I'd only been doing it in my summers because I was a full-time teacher. I didn't have, I couldn't do it anyway, but it obviously was a force within my life, that I would go to. So as I maybe said to some of you, I just, because of the circumstances in my life, I had more time, and I also had a studio in my house. My house had been renovated, and I had a space to work, which was good, because before in my house I couldn't seem to even get back from my work to even look at it more than a few feet, so it was very frustrating. And just by happenstance, I went to Gallery 1 in Toronto and looked at Michael Matthews' work. And he had said he'd gone to Emma Lake, and I had done an essay at York University in Sandra Schall's class in my American and Canadian Art History course about the influence that Barnett Newman had on Emma Lake and the Regina Five, and I looked specifically at Kenneth Lockheed and Ronald Bluer. And so when I read about Michael Matthews going to Emma Lake, and I thought, I was still going on. And then the next day, Barbara Bellacci phoned me, and she was in town, and I knew her through another friend, and I sort of asked her. I knew she'd been, I guess, to Emma Lake, and so I said, well, what do you think? She said, well, send me some pictures of your work, and so I did, and so she wrote me a letter back, and she said, go ahead with it. So I did, and so I was really nervous about going because I'd never really worked on a day-to-day basis, and then what I did, and I didn't know what I was going to paint. I mean, Kate picked me up at the airport, and I made that trip, and I looked, I was sort of groping around thinking, what am I going to do? And there was this wonderful green field that I saw on the trip up, and that really stuck in my mind. And I did a bicycling trip way back in the early 70s in Switzerland. And I always remember those emerald green fields off in the distance. They always seemed like velvet, and they were just gorgeous. So I always have this, I love the look of green fields in the distance. And so this was one thing that I focused on. Here you see the green field. I think there's a green field in here. Anyway, the other subject was the point. The point. They say people paint the point when they go to Emma Lake. Well, this is the point. And this is the point. And I did it I took that one subject and I dealt with it in different ways. I'd seen a show in New York on David Hockney's work. So my work was sort of a bit harum-scarum. This is fairly abstract. I'm staining here, but there's the green field. And then this one, I was going to paint it, I was going to paint the whole canvas dark, and I just started painting, and then I decided I liked this. So I was really starting to look more at what was happening on the canvas as opposed to trying to control it all the time. I had my time off from school, then continued on with dealing with landscape, but, a lot of mosquitoes around. And these are just sort of more aerial views of landscapes. The other thing is, I sort of wondered why I went back to landscape, but when I think about it, I was advised actually to go into landscape architecture after high school, whatever test I took, I don't know. And then, And then I majored in geography and or minored in geography next to fine art. And so I was dealing with maps and aerial views of things. And then, of course, with having the farm, I had the farm for 13 years. I just loved gardening and having my hands in the soil. So I definitely have an affinity for the land. And so it seems to continue, maybe even more so now because I don't have the farm.